You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. We have on the phone with us today Michael E.Gerber, who is a true legend of entrepreneurship. He started with the book The E-Myth many, many years ago, and because of him, there are thousands and thousands of business, including my own, that have become very, very successful. Michael, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Doug. I'm delighted to be here.
I want to note that the Wall Street Journal recently said that your book was the most influential book of all time for entrepreneurs. And maybe before we get too much into the details or too far into the questions, tell me what made you originally write the book?
Well, it was an epiphany that I'd had a number of years before, that most small businesses don't work, the people who own them do, and they're doing the wrong work. And I came face to face with that fact time and time again with clients of close friends of mine who owned an ad agency in Silicon Valley. And I was astonished to see how dysfunctional actually all of those companies were. And so I asked the question, why is that? And if in fact there is this dysfunctionality that I perceive there to be, what could be done about it? Well, we set about to create a company that would do something about it, which then was called the Michael Thomas Corporation, the business development firm that was determined to set out and solve that dysfunctionality, that problem. And the work that we did led to the creation of the book, Why Most Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It, the E-Myth.
Okay, so you first wrote this about how many years ago?
The book was written in 1986.
Okay, so the world has changed a great deal since then. Do the principles and theories actually still apply?
Oh, absolutely. That's the extraordinary thing about it. In fact, it blows my publisher's mind. Harper is constantly blown away that the book sells more today than it ever did. That my true believers, the evangelists of the E-Myth, are consistently clear that the book has given them something they had never heard before from any business expert, in any of their education or training, or any of the experience in business. And it's as true in high tech as it is in no tech. And it's as true in a retail business as it is in a wholesale or a distribution company or a professional service or an unprofessional service. In other words, it's a universal truth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's just speak about that truth for 1 minute. I think probably what I get out of the book the most, and I guess what many, many people did, was that in running a business, you know, my day job is that I'm a financial advisor, so I deal with a lot of people, and we've got a lot of clients, and we specialize in international clients. So there's a lot of different moving parts. And what you said in the book was you have to set up your company like a franchise so that what you do is repeatable, so that you're not constantly reinventing the wheel every morning when you come into work. That really spoke to me. But what happens to people who don't see themselves as systems developers?
Well, the fact of the matter is no one who goes into business really thinks of themselves as systems developers. They think of themselves as a financial advisor or a graphic designer or a plumber, you name it. And of course that's true because they start their business with what I call fatal assumption that because they understand how to do the technical work, the financial advising, the plumbing, the graphic design, they understand how to build a business that does that work. Well, it's just not true. The fact of the matter is, knowing how to do the work in the business is exactly the last thing you need to be concerned about. What you need to be concerned about is getting it to work systematically to be able to produce a consistent result. So you have to have a clear vision of what your company is there to do. That vision is the product, if you will, of systems thinking. Entrepreneurs, the absence of which is spoken about in all my E-Myth books, the E-Myth being the entrepreneurial myth, and entrepreneurial myth being that people who go into business aren't really entrepreneurs, but what I call technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. In other words, a financial advisor who starts a financial advisory practice, believing that fatal assumption. Well, we need to change the assumption for a moment and begin to see that there are really three people inside of Doug Goldstein, and that is the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. The entrepreneur is by his or her very nature a systems thinker. In short, the entrepreneur sees the plan, sees the vision, sees the picture from above. And in the process of transcending your company, you're able to see the operating reality or preferred reality of your company as a picture. And that's what systems thinkers naturally do. So what we need to do is not to think like, I got to become a systems thinker. No, you've got to awaken the entrepreneur within you who will immediately, and I believe this is true for every single solitary soul I've ever worked with, and we've worked with tens upon tens of thousands of them, you'll immediately see everything differently, just like, Doug, you did.
That is true. We are talking with Michael E.Gerber, who came up with the whole concept of the E-Myth, and I read his book, and millions of people probably have read the book by now. He's personally helped tens of thousands of small business owners transform their businesses into world-class operations. We've been talking for a minute about systems developers, and I think you made a good distinction that the entrepreneur is not necessarily someone who is a system developer going in, but he sees the big picture, he has the vision, and then sees what needs to be done in order to get there. I think another myth that you shattered was that entrepreneurs are risk takers. Everyone says, wow, he's an entrepreneur, he must be really into risk. And speaking for myself, I'm not really into risk. I just like developing the business. Have you found a lot of people have begun to hear your message there?
Oh, absolutely. You understand that when somebody has been doing what they're doing and it's not giving them what they want, and that describes just about anybody who owns a business anywhere in the world, in good times and in bad times, in bad economic times and in great economic times, businesses are going out of business. The vast majority of small businesses fail. Well, the person who owns that company is in most cases distraught. And distraught with the fact that no matter how hard she or he works, no matter how determined he is to get it right, somehow something just doesn't quite work or get it. And so everybody is frustrated by that. And because everybody's frustrated by that, when they suddenly come face to face with somebody who isn't frustrated by that and seems to have a grasp of it, and the grasp is so intuitively accurate, they all say to me, my God, it was like you were talking about me, Michael. It was like you were following me around my business. It happens to me every single day, Doug. And it's extraordinary. Yes, millions of people who are supposedly entrepreneurs, own a small business, absolutely want to get it right, come to the E-Myth, and they suddenly have an epiphany of their own. And that's an extraordinary experience.
So a lot of these themes we're talking about, that entrepreneurs are not necessarily risk takers and that they understand the importance of having systems for what they do. You preach this and have been teaching this for decades to business owners. But as we're saying it, and I'm saying it to you now, I feel like I say these sorts of things to clients when I do personal financial planning. I'll say to them, listen, don't try to time the market. Don't look and see what stock is hot today and buy that, and then tomorrow you'll have a new idea, and next week a new idea. And I also teach my clients that they have to be very careful about the risk that they take. So frankly, it sounds to me like there's a new book, which is your concept applied to personal finances. Does that make sense to you?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Because in fact, it's true. You know it. I know it. There's something universal about what you do, Doug. Now, understand, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a financial planner. I'm not even interested in the subject. But what I
won't take it personally.
Thank you. But what I do know, Doug, is that there are universal truths about everything that goes on in the world. And because there are universal truths about everything that goes on in the world, our job as human beings is to discover what those truths are. That's all that happened to me. I simply saw it. I had that epiphany. I had that a moment of awakening by looking at what wasn't working and suddenly finding something that did, which conflicted with every decision every small business owner I was meeting had and made. And I had to say to myself, holy moly, how in the world did he see that? And that he I'm talking about was Ray Kroc, the founder, the creator of that extraordinary company, McDonald's. McDonald's is the exemplar for the kind of thing I'm talking about. And I'm essentially saying that, Doug, if you were to do with your company what Ray Kroc did with his, you would have franchisees, licensees, or managers who are doing exactly what you do and exactly the way you do it, scalable to a T throughout the world. You could do that. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. It's quite extraordinary when you suddenly see anybody doing it.
And I just want to note, I think the important part about that is even the person who doesn't want to be the owner of McDonald's, meaning if your goal in life is not to be in charge of 1,000 franchises, you should still run your small business in that same way because that's how your small business itself will be successful.
Oh, absolutely. But you understand, until you do that in your small business, you don't have a choice.
And you don't have a chance either.
You don't have a chance and you don't have a choice. You will never become Ray Kroc. You will never own McDonald's. You'll never scale what you do. So even before you do or believe you wish to own McDonald's or create your own version of it, you have to do it for your small business. Your small business is your franchise prototype. So Doug, you went to work on your financial advisory. You went to work on your practice to turnkey it so that it could be scalable, so that it could be replicable, but most importantly, so that it would work in an exquisitely predictable way.
And that is what I learned from you many years ago, and I want to thank you. Michael E.Gerber, I am very, very happy you've had you on the show. We're just about out of time, but in the last few seconds, tell me what would be the next step if someone wants to learn more about what you're doing?
Well, the easiest way is come to Michael, Michael, at michaelegerber.com. And go to our website and check in. You'll be able to find my books there. And if you don't want to wait until you come to my website, just go to Amazon.com and you'll find the E-Myth there. But by all means, read the E-Myth and then talk to us about helping you to implement it.
All right. Michael, thanks again for being on the Goldstein on Gelt show. I hope we'll have you back here again soon.
Doug, a pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.